So first of all, just an introduction. I'm Will Cole. I'm the head of product at Zaprite. We're going to talk about Zaprite's API today. It's a product that we've been working on for about a year now. It's still in beta as we test it out with businesses, but it is something that we're going to be taking out of beta pretty soon. It's also had a lot of updates since the last time we've blogged about it and talked about it in the open. But just in case, even though I see a lot of familiar faces in here, I'd like to give a quick primer on what Zaprite is and what the value proposition is. So at its core, Zaprite is a Bitcoin payments gateway. And crucially, one of the biggest differences about Zaprite is that we are non-custodial, which means basically we do not operate a wallet. When you come to Zaprite, you bring your own wallet or you create one once you sign up. And what that really means is that if you like a custodial setup, if you're in the US or in parts of Europe and you like a custodial setup, you could use something like Strike or Coin Corner in the UK, where funds flow directly to the custody solution that you're already comfortable with for yourself or your business. We also support a host of non-custodial setups as well, including just setting up, say, like an XPub on a single sig hardware wallet or a configuration file from Unchained for multi-sig. And then on the Lightning side, you could connect a wallet via something like an LND invoice macaroon, right? The point of that is that we ourselves, while we're a payment gateway, we are not a payment processor. We never take possession of funds. It always goes directly to your choice of custodian. We have several products other than the API. We started out with invoicing. We also have payment links, a lightweight point of sale system, and of course the API that we're going to talk about today. And the value prop on top of just being able to accept Bitcoin payments is that you can accept Bitcoin payments side by side with fiat payments in the same checkout with a single unified user experience. This is very different. You know, if you're used to buying some things on the odd chance that a company accepts Bitcoin, usually these are very disparate payment flows for customers. They have the option to go through the payment route, the fiat payment route, and then a totally different option to go through the Bitcoin payment route. And we think that, you know, we're realist in the sense that most companies are not going to only accept Bitcoin. They have obligations in fiat and in dollars. You know, some companies are going to do this just to get the 1, 2, 3 to 5% of payments that will come through in Bitcoin. But at least it starts those companies on the path of making customers happy that want to pay in Bitcoin and also creating a reliable Sats flow for their business and Bitcoin in their treasury. But at the end of the day, it's that unified checkout experience that Zaprite is offering. The API specifically, it has a very similar value proposition to Zaprite overall, except that the Zaprite sort of application is focused on templates and payment workflows like invoices and payment links, while Zaprite's API is much more generic and allows people to fit it into whatever your business is already doing. The API still has the same value proposition, though, in that it includes all the custodial solutions and non-custodial solutions as wallet connections. It includes the side-by-side checkout experience of both fiat payments and Bitcoin payments. It includes things like fiat autopay. If you're using something like Square, you can set up autopay workflows. But it crucially has like all the things you would expect out of a well-formed API, like a sandbox environment, testing environment, and team support. The other great thing about using the API is that instead of building everything yourself, you know, obviously the tools are helpful, but all the reporting, everything that comes through the API will still go into the Zaprite application reporting, so you can get the CSV files and everything you would need for an accounting purpose. And we'll get more on that in just a little bit. So We're going to walk through kind of step by step everything you can do with the API. It's very simple, actually. At the end of the day, we've heard anything from it takes a couple hours for people to set this up to maybe a couple days, just depending on your own application, the complexity, and what you're trying to get out of it. But the point is that it's standard REST API. It's well documented. It's been tested now in the wild for many, many months, and so it's stable and reliable. And at the end of the day, the simplest thing that we could possibly give to you was something that was generic, that could fit numerous payment workflows for your customers. Okay, as a standard REST API, I want to talk about sort of the prerequisites that you need to do before you get into the code and before you start accepting Bitcoin payments. The very first thing you need to do when you sign up for a Zaprite account is you need to set up a payment connection. So as I mentioned before, we have a various custodial and non-custodial options. This process usually takes just a couple minutes. If you already have a Strike account, for instance, what I'm showing here is you can simply type in your Strike handle, hit connect, and you're done. It takes a few seconds. If you have an L&D node running for for Lightning payments, you would put in your invoice macaroon and get going from there. Same thing, unchain your configuration file. There's lots of different things, but really the point is that you want to set up, if you have an on-chain way of receiving payments, if you have a Lightning way of receiving payments, a fiat way of receiving payments, you would do all of those as a prerequisite inside of the application. And again, usually each connection takes a few seconds or a couple minutes. Once you set up payment methods, we want to enable the API keys. Very simple. In the application, you go to the settings in the API section, you request access, and then you just hit these add API keys. You give it a name and a label, and you're really off and running. You can also, in this area, and we'll talk about this in more detail in just a little bit, you can set up your webhook URLs, and yeah, it's in the same place. One thing to note is that the API keys need to be kept private. They're designed for server-side access, not client-side. You never want to expose it. It's a secret. Be secret about it. Once you do that in the application, the last real thing you need to do in the application is you need to set up an API checkout. Now, I want to focus on this a little bit more than just what it looks like. You might set up, say you set up, an XPub for on-chain payments, a Strike account for Lightning payments, and Square for fiat payments, or something like that. Or in this case, it's Strike and Unchained and Square. You can also add redundancies in here. And this is one of the value propositions at the top I forgot to mention, is that a lot of you are, maybe in regular non-Bitcoin related businesses. Some of you are in Bitcoin businesses, and you've been deplatformed in one way or another. Sometimes it's innocent, and it's just something where you get caught up in an algorithm that flags your account, but your funds get held up, or you can't process transactions anymore if it's a custodial fiat payment rail or something like that. We found a lot of businesses that run into this issue. We support redundancy on almost every single payment rail, whether that be, not almost every single payment rail, whether that be on-chain, Lightning, custodial, non-custodial, or even fiat, right? So a lot of our clients, what they end up wanting to do is they set up two fiat rails. They'll set up Square and Stripe, or Stripe and Authorize.net, right? And the reason you want to do this is so that you can limit interruptions to your ongoing business. So that if, for whatever reason, Stripe has a problem with what you're doing, or is withheld funds, or is down, or something like that, you can very easily go into the Zaprite app, turn off Stripe, turn on Square, takes 5 seconds, and your ability to receive payments is uninterrupted. Or on a Bitcoin example, if for whatever reason you're rolling over a wallet, or you don't have access to a custodial account, you can really switch things out without any business critical or mission critical processes being interrupted. You configure them in the application. You turn on what your default is going to be, but you can have several that are not turned on, and you can swap them out as necessary. Once you've generated the custom checkout, in the API, you'll be passing the ID in the custom checkout ID field inside of the create order, and we'll get to that in just a minute as well. So before we get into all the nitty gritty, we also have this idea of contacts. So contacts are not necessary for every order type. They are necessary when we talk about invoices in the future, but these are in case you have required fields in your as a part of your checkout. If you require name, or if you're shipping things, you need a shipping address or something like that. You would be creating contacts, which can later be, searched and reported on. Again, follows all the REST API principles here, where you can create, post, get, delete, all the normal actions you would expect. And the contacts themselves are going to be things like their legal name, their contact name, their email address, their billing address, that type of thing, their payment methods or payment profiles, as it were. Again, this is not required if you have something that is KYC free, or you're not shipping something physical or something like that. You don't have to create or interrogate or deal with contacts at all. However, there are, it's there if you do need it. And also for certain products in the API, like invoices, it is required that you have a contact in at least their email so that we can send out invoices and receipts or something like that. And that's one other good point, is that if you want Zaprite to issue receipts when you're using the API, you would want to create a contact. You don't have to have all the fields filled out. You can be picky here, but you'd want an email so that automatic receipts would be sent out. That's also a setting, by the way, inside of the API, is you can choose whether or not you want receipts to go out or something like that. But again, in order to do that, you would need a contact. But into the really powerful stuff, the really simple stuff, but very powerful stuff, creating an order. So creating an order is really at the heart of what our API can do for you and your business. And there's really only two things that we need, right? Once you've set up all the prerequisites, the way you're going to receive payments, is we just need you to pass us an amount in a currency, and we can create an order. Now, there's other things you can put in there. Those are the only required fields. You can put in notes, and you can have, again, like shipping, billing details, stuff like that. But really all we need are the amount in currency, and then a URL that will redirect back to your application once a order is either canceled or successfully processed. You can see in here, the post request here is we're looking for an amount, what currency you're charging in. It can be denominated in USD, it could be denominated in Bitcoin, it could be in euros. It doesn't really matter to us, and you'll see a list of what we support in there. And then the amount, and we also have a unique ID that's included in this. It can be something that we provide, or something some system you set up externally, and then that redirect URL. It could include other things, even things like internal notes or something like that. And at this point, I would be remiss if I didn't, mention this tip, the api.zaprite.com. You can see a list of all the things that are in there. But this create order thing is really at the heart, because as a generic solution to whatever you're doing in your business, this allows you to control the user experience up to the checkout point. And as long as we get these very few things that we need, the user would go through your selling or procurement or whatever process that you have for what you're selling. And then when they actually go to execute the buy, they would be redirected to a branded checkout. You can set up the checkout page, not just with your preferred payment options, but also with your logo and the branding and the colors and everything that you want. And then as the user checks out there, they'll be redirected back. It's very common e-commerce workflow if you've used any payment processors, in the past. But of course, with the added benefit of being able to accept Bitcoin and fiat side by side. Really, for most of the lifespan of the API to date, this is what we've been focused on, is just creating these orders, because we don't have to be opinionated about what type of business you are. You get to control everything leading up to the checkout, and at the very end, we come in and just provide that nice experience for the customer. You also, we do have people that will continue to do their fiat processing the way that they've known it the whole time. I think a lot of that is actually because they haven't actually seen how this works when you combine the fiat and the Bitcoin together. Like I mentioned before, if you're using us, one of the really big benefits is that you don't have to have that really awkward experience where you have one user path going down the fiat line and another user path going down the Bitcoin line. So I would encourage you to at least experiment with that and see if you get better conversions, if it feels better for customers, and ultimately, if you get better results from, if you're trying to get more Bitcoin transactions. I think this is a way that you could get more Bitcoin transactions. There's also one other really big benefit for combining everything together into a single checkout instead of having that sort of disjointed user experience, is that if there's anything you want to do to augment the checkout, so that means like you have a discount code, or you have a premium or a discount just based off of a payment method. These are things you can set up in the app, right? You could say, I want there to be a 20% premium for fiat payments, or a 10% discount for Bitcoin payments, on the payment rail side, or I have a discount code for something and it's going to affect the amounts on the order. If you want to affect that in totality on the checkout, if you have different payment, if you have different checkout implementations for Bitcoin and for fiat, then you're going to have to recreate a lot of the code in order to deal with discounts, premiums, and things like that. While we make it, as easy as, 30 seconds, plug it into the main app, and then you got it. So again, if you're doing anything like that and you want to augment what the end checkout is going to be, there's a lot of benefits for combining these things outside of just the user experience or the signaling the preference for Bitcoin payments or something like that. Okay, so we've created an order, or we know how to create an order. I want to jump into the newest feature that we've added to the API, which is creating an invoice. So prior to adding this into the API, technically you could still create an invoice, but you'd have to write a lot of the code of recreating what an invoice looks like and what it does and the differences between a typical e-commerce checkout. And of course, we do invoices in our main application. We got a lot of feedback that people would just like to piggyback off of that and programmatically be able to create these invoices. So as of a few weeks ago, you can now create invoices programmatically from the API. There's a lot of similarities to the order, but there's also quite a bit of differences. So I'd mentioned one of them at the top, which is contacts are required for invoices, meaning it's got to go somewhere. We have to send it somewhere. You can't really get around this. We need a contact for an invoice, but also the invoice object itself is just packed with lots of different things. We have, if you look over on the right-hand side here, you can see like an example of the types of things that you might have. You have the currency, you have the amounts like you normally would, but you also have things like the invoice title, the invoice number, what the terms of payment are, should this be paid upon receipt within 30 days, those types of things. Anything you really do in the application, you can also do here. You can customize the footer notes inside of the invoice, you have purchase order numbers, and then critically you have like the standard invoice line items, right? And here we're only doing one, but you can go nuts with that and do many line items. And the good thing here is you can include tax rates in there. You can include discounts and negative numbers in there as well. You can really do anything that you can do in the main application, but you can do it, again, programmatically via the API. The note at the bottom here, we do have different statuses for invoices, and critically, whenever an invoice is created via the API, we're going to automatically mark that as sent, to whatever contact that you've provided for us here. But at the end of the day, yeah, you can do this now. It's really nice. We have a few people using it. We'd love to hear more feedback on it. And if you like our standard invoicing product but wanted this ability to programmatically change it, now you have it. All right. I can see chat's firing up here, but I'm going to keep on going. We also have webhook responses. So again, I mentioned this at the top. When you're setting up the API and the API key, you can include webhook URLs. This is really just to get any status changes on an order. So seeing if something was canceled, paid, that sort of thing, and being alerted to it, or even like on the invoice side that an invoice has been sent successfully, or if there was an error or something like that. So we have the webhooks set up for you. Again, it's pretty simple to interrogate and look through. So I'm going to keep on moving on here. Let's talk about outside of creating is actually searching and querying an order. So if you receive a webhook response for an order change, you can then query the order just using the GET request. And you can find the status of the order or any associated transactions with an order. So also that's on the order side. Also, the same thing really applies to invoices. Once an invoice is sent, it will include an order ID, which allows you to query any of the specifics of that order. And then, when you receive the invoice object, the response will contain everything, all the information about that invoice. So you can see over here on the right, basically what types of things you can expect to get back, right? So again, while we have all the reporting and everything inside of the application, you might want to automate, some responses back into like an accounting system or into your own reporting system or into your own success messages at the end of a successful transaction. And this is the way you would do that. Cool. So there are lots of ways you can get started with this, with the API. You're going to want to test the API integration. We have ways to do this so you're not dealing with live data or live transactions or having to spend a bunch of Bitcoin back and forth. You can simulate payments with fake payments. You can set up a sandbox account at the very beginning so that you're not dealing with anything in production. Highly recommend doing this. I know it's kind of seems like a standard thing at this point, but there's still a lot of big companies that we use, and I'm sure you use as well in your business, that for whatever reason still haven't set up a sandbox. It was one of the first things that we got out there, and it allows you to play around with no or very small consequences. You can also test real payments as well. That's fine if you want to really battle harden whatever your custody setup is, or if you're doing something complicated on the, for instance, self-custody L&D side and you really want to test it out, you can do that, but you can also run through some fake payments and fake data if you want to. It's also good to sort of practice in this environment if you wanted to switch out payment methods at any time, just to see. I mean, it really is simple, and it's going to, once you do it, it's going to feel kind of silly that I'm even, talking about this, but it is really, that is a big part of the value here, is that you can make sure that you don't experience that downtime. I would, for whoever is the administrator of the account, whether that's you yourself or someone in your accounting department or product team or something like that, that they just get used to like how to swap these things out. So if you do have downtime on a particular payment method, that you can swap them out very fast and have no interruption to your customers. All right, I'm going to wrap up here in just a couple minutes, but just visualizing the full API payment flow here. So at the end of the day, while this is very simple, it's very powerful, right? Starts out, you're going to create a new order via the API. That's over here on the left. You're going to get that currency. You're going to get that amount, and that's going to be sent over to Zaprite. The customer is going to visit that branded Zaprite page. They're going to have those options, whether it's fiat and Bitcoin, just Bitcoin, custodial, non-custodial, on-chain versus Lightning, all the options. Oh, I should mention real fast while we're doing this is that it's not just credit card on the fiat side. It's also Google Pay, Apple Pay, all the things that come with Square or Stripe are also included in those fiat options. It's not just credit cards. Once it goes there, we're going to be interacting with whatever custody option you chose. If it's a custodial thing like Stripe, we're talking to the Stripe API. We're generating basically an invoice, a QR code that your customer can pay. That could also be going to your L&D node or through your XPub, retrieving an address, right? The customer is going to interact with that QR code. They're going to pay. We're going to show them a success message and a countdown to redirect back to the merchant, your website basically. And then we provide you a webhook so that you can show your own order fulfilled or whatever you want to do at that point, right? They're just going to come back and you can define the user experience that you want to show once the order is successful. And really, it's that simple. It's supposed to be simple, but we do think that for a lot of our clients, using our web app, it's totally fine. It's very powerful itself. But for a lot of the medium and bigger businesses, or if you're just technically inclined and you want to have more control over the user experience altogether, that the API has been very successful in serving a really wide range of use cases for e-commerce, whether it's for professional services or API, if you're selling your own API, if you're shipping things or whatever you're doing, it seems to work really well. Last thing I want to mention is pricing. The API is still in beta, which means that there's no additional fees associated with the API outside of your standard monthly or yearly billing for the API. Right now, I believe that's $25 a month or $240 for a year. I want to be very, very open, though, that we will be moving to a fee-based model in the future. We're part of the reason we're doing this webinar is to make sure that we can take the API out of beta with confidence. It's been very, very solid to date, but in the coming months, we will be shifting that over. Obviously, we'll be transparent and there will be, lag time between the switchover and payment models. But really, right now, it's just that $240 a year, $25 a month. We are actively looking for feedback. Want to know what new features you want, what's missing, and what will help you take Bitcoin payments and fiat payments side by side, and be successful. Also, before we jump into Q&A, I just want to mention, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us, drop fiat at zaprite.com. You can also hit me up on Twitter at Will Cole. And we also have a live chat inside the app on Zaprite. We're quite responsive. We're moving fast, and we definitely want to hear how the setup is, how the performance is, and what you're thinking about the product.